Hello, this is Afrofuturism, a black vision of science fiction. Um, this year has seen a lot of discourse about the black experience in America and abroad. But instead of looking at the present and being trapped by the past, what we want to do in this panel is look to the future and see ways in which we can grow and explore in our realm of video games. I'm Jordan Miner. I'm an analyst at PCMag.com. I'm joined by these three gentlemen. Please introduce yourselves, because I'm just meeting you for the first time here.
Sure. I can start. My name is Anthony Jones. I have been in the film and game industry for nearly 12 years. 12 years now. I've worked for companies like Blizzard, Riot Games as some of the more popular studios, and I also worked with some indie developers like Heart Shaped Games to work on some of their projects that has a little bit of that Afrofuturism as one of its main aesthetics. My favorite things to draw, though, is definitely robots and monsters, things that live mostly in the sci-fi realm. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm here in California, sunny California.
And representing sunny California. I'll go next. Hi, I'm Xalavier Nelson Jr. I'm a narrative director in games. You might know me for my work on Skatebird, We Are the Caretakers, also by Heart Shaped Games. Hypnospace Outlaw, An Airport for Aliens, currently run by dogs, or any of the dozens of other titles that I've worked on. Afrofuturism and grappling with how to tell stories within that setting as part of the diaspora has been a really interesting challenge and has genuinely broadened my perspective as a human being. So it's really exciting to be able to talk about it and to advocate for, yes, more Afrofuturism. We need it.
Yes, hello everybody. I am Ural Garrett, representing Inglewood, California. I am a freelance music and video game journalist. Probably been doing that for the past 10, almost 15 years. Been in everywhere from IGN to MTV News, to Complex, Hip Hop DX, to Tech Radar. I also am the project manager and social media manager for will.i.am's multimedia production company, iamMedia. A couple years ago, we released Masters of the Sun, which is a graphic novel we released through Marvel. We also had an AR and virtual reality component to it as well. We also do film, television, and music stuff as well.
I'm in New York, but in the spirit of solidarity, we can just not have any beef.
Yeah, Jordan lives in California, is what he's saying.
I love California. I have tons of friends in California.
Some of my best friends are from California.
My mom grew up in Oakland for a little while, so.
Okay, there you go.
But cool. So I think just a good place to start off. We're gonna just kind of keep it kind of free flowing here, but I think just a good place to start off is just to kind of explain what Afrofuturism is to some people who may not know and can't just kind of put those two words together and figure it out. Then what's happening with that?
Yeah, I can give you kind of my opinion on it. I think, so whenever I think about Afrofuturism, it's very much in the line of, like, I think if we were to find something very relatable, is like the movie Black Panther, right? Everybody has seen, or like a lot of people have seen this movie internationally, and I think what's great about that movie, and something that really woke me up to this idea, was that, what if African culture had this prosperous kind of futuristic outlook? Because what we see a lot in media, even in international markets, not just in American markets, is a lot of kind of what we would see it from like a Western perspective, and we're starting to see some I'm glad to see that we're seeing stuff like even in Eastern cultures, they're starting to have their own idea of what their future could look like, as well as Middle Eastern, they're really going all in on it too. But you could still tell there's a little spice of the Western influence, if that makes sense. And I think there's nothing wrong with that entirely, but it's just as a designer, I think there is a lot of value in variety, and especially in our country specifically, there is very, very limited representation of the African futuristic aspect of a world where you know,
You
like
want
if
to
you
see some
think
black
about,
people in space.
yeah, like we always just imagine, yeah, exactly what you said. Like if you think about a movie like Blade Runner, that's in the future, but it's, you know, we don't imagine black people are living there. When we think about Star Wars, again, like there was only like 2 black people, and it's not to say that these movies should just completely capsize and now have nothing but a complete black cast. What I'm saying is that there should be more of a movie that is like, yeah, like you, exactly what you said. What if it was just like if Tyler Perry decided to make a black space movie? What would that look like? I'm
He was
interested.
in Star
Technically,
Trek for
he
a
was
hot
in Star
minute.
Trek. He was in Star
Yeah.
Trek.
But if he made the movie, I'm not saying whether he was starring in it, you know, or any other, like Spike Lee, another you know, well-known, you know, director. Like, what if he made a space, like a futuristic movie? You know what I mean?
I think you
Because
identify something. Oh, sorry. I was just going to
oh,
say, I
I'll
think
just
you
make this
identify.
last point, and then I'll because I can go on forever. Because even with Black Panther, like they sought out a black director versus like a black director who just kind of like went all in without like, you know, some sort of larger entity. Does that make sense? And I think like people in our position are in the right. We have the right opportunity to kind of make this happen. You know, start from the ground up. A good example in the Latin community is like the Book of Life. Have you guys seen that? Where that director, that was like his passion.
Is that a
Like he won.
cartoon?
Yeah, it was like an animated
Okay.
film. Yeah, but that director, that was his, like he's from the Latin community. That was his passion to make this film, and everybody told him every opportunity they could, it wouldn't do well. You know what I mean? Where, you know, Black Panther was already part of a larger franchise, and Marvel was like, we got to do it because we have this like Avengers movie franchise that we want to like complete. You know, and so I think it's a good opportunity. And Black Panther, like I'm very grateful for that movie because it really did shine a light of like, this is pretty cool, isn't it? Like this is super tight, you know, and we need more of that. And I'm trying to do my best from the artistic angle to see if I can help with that. So, anyways, you were saying though, Xalavier, before I interrupted you.
No, it was I interrupted you first. I think you identified something really important in terms of the creatives from those at least adjacent to those cultures and backgrounds addressing these topics, because Afrofuturism doesn't just speak to a beautiful aesthetic sensibility or to the idea of what if black but in space, but it also speaks to different cultural patterns. No matter how far future our settings are, they still tend to be based on the patterns of colonialism, on the patterns of I mean, even Star Trek. This utopian society is still based from. It is at its best when it confronts the idea that it's based on one concept of how a culture moves forward, and that is a bunch of white people in glorified space boats going to other places and telling them how to operate. Grappling with that sensibility in a variety of methods, by questioning the patterns that our media is built upon, by building new patterns, by looking to places such as Africa, where if you're a member of the diaspora, it can be difficult to do that because African settings have typically been used to stereotype and vilify and mock. All of these things speak to sort of the hope and optimism that Afrofuturism can organically bring to the table.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, you're saying like, yeah, just like, yeah, like you were saying about not just being aesthetics. Yeah, just changing because like aesthetics and storytelling, it's like it's advancing agendas. So you kind of get at that root of just changing your entire just fundamental way of thinking. Like yeah, like just decolonizing your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do we all learn about this as a concept, Afrofuturism?
Like, how did I learn about it, or how do we?
How did like in your history? Like, how did you learn about it personally?
Oh yeah, literally watching Black Panther. I was just like, wait, this is super cool. I'm half black, half Korean, right? And my dad, and my dad's side are just like, you know, straight black. There's very little mixture there, right? And my mom, it's the same thing, just straight like Korean. Like she's from the farmlands of Korea, you know. And my dad was in the military, and he joined the military because he wanted to have a better life for himself and for his family. And with the military, they provide like education, healthcare, all these great benefits for joining the service. And my dad joined through the Air Force, and because of that, he was able to get free education, like I mentioned, and he became a computer engineer. And because of that, I was always surrounded by like technology. I was always surrounded by a better circumstance than some of my cousins and my uncles and aunts may have had, right? And I was always kind of away from any of the kind of stuff that we see on TV a lot. I didn't really see much of that because, again, I had my mom too, which was Korean, and she had her own, ideals of culture and beliefs that she put onto me as well, right? And so I was always kind of indifferent. I was always very neutral, and I still consider myself very much so. But after like years of people saying like we need more representation, I was just like, yeah, it makes sense. But I was never really that involved. And then after I saw Black Panther, for me, it was the first time where I really felt like I saw a really good fantasy story with an almost entirely black cast. Does that make sense? And I didn't know why that would be awesome until I actually saw it. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of what everybody was talking about. Because then I started thinking about like, whenever I do think about a movie as full of black, like a full black cast, what do I think about? I do think about like Tyler Perry movies. There's a very specific Western idea that we have of this, and it's only a one sort of idea. And the problem that I had with that is not so much that the idea of itself. Like, I don't really think that Tyler Perry movies are terrible. I actually like them. It's just that like there's that kind of movie, and then there's like, well, the 12 years of slavery, where look at how racism is bad and discrimination is black, and that's like, where's another one? The one with the female. They basically were like mathematicians, and
Hidden
like,
Hidden Figures.
Yeah,
We all
but
got
there's
it.
like, yeah, Blindside, another good example. Like, but they're always like about oppression. Does that make sense? Like,
we're boxed into these social movies that these are important movies, but yeah, like there's a whole range of imagination that we as creators like should be free to explore.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's like the strong black characters that like you see in Tyler Perry movies, like that really heavy family dynamic, and then there's like, look at how racism and oppression is bad.
And it doesn't help that when we're recognized for our achievements in like film or these other things, it's not because of the thing we did in this other sphere. It's because of, man, you sure did get whipped really hard in that one scene.
It's not relatable is what I'm getting at. Like, I didn't feel any of that stuff was 100% relatable, where seeing like this fantasy film with just mostly black actors and actresses doing cool stuff, and there was a sense of like, there was like a warmonger who had that kind of like typical story that we would see, but then it was in the context of like Wakandians didn't provide that service when they could have. It was really interesting and fresh, you know what I mean? And on top of that, it was just a really cool fantasy action movie that showed a lot of like future technology with an African aesthetic. Does that make sense? And that to me was just like, that's rad. That's like super rad. And I was just like, okay, I get it now. Like, we need to like diversify the catalog, you know what I mean? And Afrofuturism is one of those ways, right? Because there's plenty of sci-fi movies, there's plenty of superhero movies, there's plenty of action movies and all this stuff. And I think having a entirely black cast is important, but also it's just like, we just need more movies that just should like support ideas I don't think people see enough of, and it will help kind of like it'll just only amplify this message that I think those other movies do a good job of. Like, when you look at like the 12 Years a Slave or Hidden Figures, right? It's like we already got that message. We get it. We want more of like a positive outlook that's not always like poor black people, And I felt like Black Panther really did a good job of that, And I think there's not enough movies that kind of do it in that way. Like, it's like a fantasy that makes you really inspired. Because when I watch Thor Ragnarok, like, of course there's no such thing as like like Viking gods and stuff. But I
that
loved
we
it.
know of.
Yeah. But I
It's all
loved
just
it, right?
ancient aliens, yeah.
Yeah, but I loved it. I can see that there's like, if I was a little kid, I can be really motivated and inspired by this in a different way than just seeing somebody who's like just a good person, a good leader, right? Like it's just like, oh no, I like this because it's funny, charismatic, it's enjoyable. You know what I mean? And so that to me is what really got me educated on it, and I started looking more and more into it. I have like a whole Pinterest board that's just full of stuff that of other artists who've done a really good job of this. You know?
That's a cool example because yeah, Black Panther is probably the most just like mainstream, touch
Dude,
point for people for this
absolutely.
aesthetic. For me, I first encountered this when I was going to college in Chicago. I was taking a film class on Tyler Perry, funnily enough. And I was just seeing a lot of talks, and this author, Yatasha Womack, came and she wrote a book just as called Afrofuturism. And she gave a talk, and I was just really blown away by it because yeah, it kind of touches on this thing that I knew that I was looking for, but I didn't really have a way to articulate it. Of like I don't like a lot of I don't like Game of Thrones. I don't like Lord of the Rings. I don't like a lot of fantasy stuff because I have no interest in living in a kind of Western past because I just feel like I wouldn't have a good time, right? Um,
Yeah, I don't think even people who fantasize it would have a good time either. Like the
right,
audience in which you're referring to. I don't think
right.
anybody would, especially
So,
Game of Thrones. It's pretty terrible.
but that stuff's not very imaginative. I get the appeal in that sense, but yeah, I wanted some of that, but in an aesthetic that I just jived more with, and I was definitely getting a lot of that from Afrofuturism. And in that book, or maybe it was a different book. I think there's a book that was called Black Kirby. It was taking a lot of old '60s Jack Kirby
Oh
comics
yeah.
and just sort of recontextualizing them. Like, what if MLK was Professor X and
Oh, that's cool.
so very
I'm
cool
looking that
film.
up right now. It's
Yeah.
really hard to find because there's a whole bunch of people who really like making Kirby the Nintendo character black, though.
So yeah, it was those two things together in college that kind of got me on board with it in a big way.
Two examples for me of kind of my first look into Afrofuturism was Frank Miller's Life and Times of Martha Washington.
Yes.
Which really kind of oh, this is cool. Not only do you have a Black woman who's the hero, this is futuristic Chicago where, oh my God, there's still a project. And she's traveling all these all these planets, fighting these crazy corporations and whatnot. And then one of my favorite books stories of all time, this book that came out in 1920s by this guy named George Hoyer. I cannot never say the dude's name right. Called Black No More. It takes place in a kind of in the 1920s America where this Black man invents this machine that turns Black people white, and it is super fascinating. It's pretty much to me one of I say one of the early kind of Black ideas of sci-fi. That's Afrofuturism is really what attracted me to work with iamMedia for Masters of the Sun, which kind of takes Egyptology through a kind of early 80s hip hop lens that also takes place in South Central Los Angeles. Kind of a mix between sci-fi and zombie kind of idea of zombies and whatnot. And for me, I just like media in general. So for me, it's I can appreciate the Tyler Perry's and the 10 Years a Slave, and I can love stuff like Black Panther. I think the thing that also attracted Masters of the Sun to me is that, what I am Black Eyed Peas, they actually own the Masters of the Sun IP, even with the release through Marvel. So even when I remember a couple years, Master P kind of ran into some controversy when he kind of said that, no, as much as I love Black Panther, I've seen it about especially me, I've seen it about 5-6 times in theater. I swear I probably have seen it about a lot of times, on television, but we don't own that. You know what I mean? That's not ours.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Milestone.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? That's not ours. So I really hope that, it inspires either, the big corporation overlords to, give more Black writers, a chance to create a Black Panther. or something that's
Sure.
equivalent, something that becomes a multi-billion-dollar franchise. You know what I mean? I hope that we support the indie guy. I guess one of my favorite newer graphic novels, Bitterroot. I
Oh
think
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that's like amazing. You know what I mean? I think that's amazing. And that's, written, illustrated by, us. You know what I mean? So I think that I feel personally that, we shouldn't look at, the idea of being boxed in. I think we should just look at other things that are kind of adding to our overall narrative. Like, yes, the Black Panthers exist, the Bitter Roots exist, the Martha West, and the Tyler Perrys and the Spike Lees, and we all exist together because we all know that Black is not really a monolith. You know what I mean? It comes in all different shades, colors, ideologies, and all of that. So even for masters, like we took that and turned that into a complete AR experience. Where we had top of the line, A-star voice talent, from Snoop Dogg to Rosario Dawson to Common and Mary J. Blige to, John DiMaggio to John Isaacs. And then we flipped that into a virtual reality experience that we premiered at Sundance in 2018. Actually, a month before Black Panther release. So, I look at it as, it's all about adding to the narrative that what makes Black people human. You know what I mean? And it's all of that. It's all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with this very much. I think it should be an additive approach.
Yeah.
I think whenever I see online, I remember when Black Panther was coming out originally, people were really upset because they're like, why does it have to be an entirely Black cast? And I remember seeing some people kind of being a little upset about it. Same thing happened with Captain Marvel on the feminist front. And it's just kind of like, why can't movies just exist? Like, why can't a person make a movie about a very specific topic? You know what I mean? Especially when it's clearly not trying to ruffle the feathers. Like Marvel movies don't really do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Black Panther is still pretty mainstream in a lot of ways. Like,
yeah, it's
and that's fine.
kind of
That's
bizarre.
Great. Yeah,
it's kind of bizarre to think of it this way. It's a attractive thing to our culture. No, it's an additive thing. Like we want to diversify information. You know what I mean? I think when Watchmen came out on the HBO, I believe, there was the Tulsa massacre, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't know about that, including myself.
Yeah. A lot of people I know, when I saw it online, people were talking like they invented a fake thing that happened in Oklahoma, and it shows just how large the knowledge gap is, even within our own people.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I've been talking a lot already.
And then when I got oh my God, I didn't know that happened. I was like, well, that's only one of over 300, different massacres, that happened around the country, during that time. I mean, they were, whether you're talking about Tulsa, Louisiana, Alabama,
sure.
You know what I mean? I think that using the Watchmen Tulsa, I mean, look at how they took, for the longest, I know everybody here probably, read Watchmen, but Rorschach was seen as like this hero, you know what I mean, to a lot of people. Even though we know that his character was super right wing and super conservative, kind of like Rorschach would be, a Proud Boy possibly, contextually. So I think that you use that as also a learning lesson, as a teachable moment, within fiction and entertainment. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of our responsibility at the moment in an unfair kind of way, but that's our responsibility.
Things aren't fair. So
yeah.
And you touched on a really important point in the middle of that, which is Black ownership is a big part of telling those stories authentically and to making them stick. I think a lot sometimes about how Miles Morales now, which is like such a representation giving, life affirming character, wouldn't have existed and wouldn't now have the position in the Marvel canon that he does if he wasn't created by Brian Michael Bendis, an extremely beloved white guy. It's great that Miles Morales now exists and that he's finding increasing voice in the hands of creators of colors, such as, I'm going to butcher this name, but Saladin Ahmed, who's
yeah.
now currently writing the run of Miles Morales. But it's also like, in 20 years, would they be making stories about Miles Morales, or they could be making stories about Peter Parker? And who are the voices that are going to make sure those stories get told in the first place? You ensure continuity by having people who are invested in seeing that character continue actually take on that character and continue to carry their legacy forward in positions of influence.
No, yeah, that's a great point. Even just in terms of Miles Morales specifically, like the fact that he wasn't created by a black creator, and that he's still like, I love him, but he's still like a black spin on existing white character.
His dad is named Jefferson Davis.
It's true, and he's a cop. That's why personally, as far as like black takes on the Spider-Man archetype, I still ride with Static Shock, created by the late great Dwayne McDuffie. So
yeah, I love Spider-Verse, man. That movie really hit me hard.
Don't forget on the DC side, Black Lightning is an amazing, character, and the show is great.
No, we don't need to talk about DC. We're good.
That's just kidding.
This is where we divide.
So speaking about Miles Morales, we're all here also because of video games, and I think like the biggest PS5 game coming out, at least this holiday, is that Miles Morales game.
It's an expansion, low key.
Yeah, that's great too. It's 3/5 of a game, right? How do we think? How do we kind of can we apply Afrofuturism to video games specifically? Because I'm just a journalist, I'm a writer, so I'm interested with you all as creators. I feel about that.
Well, that's what we're trying to do with We Are Caretakers. Is
Plug
that
your thing? Let's go.
That's one of the ways that we're going about it, and we aren't trying to be very specific about anything in general. We're just trying to be influenced by an Afrofuturistic aesthetic. You know what I mean? And then also have this idea of we're not trying to tell a story specifically about, again, poor black people, right? We're just no, this is just the world is full of black people, and a lot of what they do is stuff that you would see in places like in Africa, right? So they're actually helping with conservation and protecting animals, but we also don't want it to be at least we were originally designed it not to be so simple as save the animals. We would actually talk to people who do this for a living, and we got some really good insight about how sometimes it's not as simple, right? Because there would be a good example of let's say an elephant that we want to protect for the many reasons, conservation, and then the same animal maybe trampled over a villager's home, right, and destroyed everything. So the villager does not have that same opinion, you know what I mean? And going back to kind of the Black Panther example, what I loved about Black Panther was that the Wakandians were nationalists, right? And that's what was really fascinating about it, right? It was taking this kind of trope that we only apply to a different, ethnicity, saying, no, this is just a general problem, right? And it's just not good, no matter who does it. You know what I mean? And that's what was great about it. And so I think with what I loved about Black Panther but it took a lot of that culture and that influence and that storytelling that you would see in African culture and just put it in a story that most people around the world could understand. Does that make sense? And same thing with what we're trying to do with our game. And a great example of what I'm trying to get at is I remember seeing a talk that Jackie Chan did, and he talked about how, he said there's something about telling a story that hits everybody that's really valuable, right? Not just one group of people, but everyone. And he talked about Mulan, right? He's look, we've been telling Mulan in our own country, this story in movies, TV shows, books for as far as I can remember. We have dozens and dozens of movies, right? But when Disney makes one movie, right, the animated film, everybody now knows who Mulan is, And he said there's something powerful about that, right? Because now everybody has a piece of our culture in their life. And he said, look, even Kung Fu Panda, we've been telling stories with pandas, right, in our movies and our TV shows, and yet again, like you take a company like DreamWorks, they make one movie about a panda and kung fu. This is our thing, and they just did a great job of telling that story. He's like, and I'm in that movie, and I'm not even the panda, you know. And and what I loved about what he was trying to get at is like, again, what you guys were getting at is like, it's more about adding to the culture, not necessarily being exclusive. I think that's the point. We don't want to be exclusive. We want to be inclusive. And whenever I hear any kind of chatter of like, oh, we got to like keep it just in, our lane, that doesn't help, right? Because when you think about like the Civil War and even the Civil Rights Movement, you saw a lot of people of all walks of life, all ethnicities walking with Martin Luther King, fighting alongside Abraham Lincoln. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like especially the Civil War. If it was just black folk fighting for their freedom, only just black folk, we would still be slaves, y'all. And so it was clear that there was like enough people at that time where there was like, no, this is a problem. And there was enough people during the Civil Rights Movement, they were like, no, this is a problem. And even thankfully during the George Floyd murder, there was enough people that were like, no, this is a problem, And I think that there's a lot of stuff that, is outside of our control. Like media can only do so much, but like media helps. It helps people, like you guys were saying earlier, like helps educate, helps get people like the Tulsa is a great example. Like I never even thought about that, like I didn't know this is like a real thing. You know what I mean? And when you start to realize these types of things, you start to question and start to talk more about it. I remember I was talking to my friend who is incredibly conservative, but he's one of my closest and dearest people in my life. He was there for me during my hardest times. And we were talking about all this Black Lives Matter stuff. And he had a very strong opinion, a very predictable opinion, right? And I told him, I was like, you do know somebody that was affected by this. And he's like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, so my dad lived during segregation. That means he was alive when segregation was still a thing. It's like, that's not that long ago. That's my father. You know what I mean? And I said, and you also have to recognize that my last name, Jones, is not from motherland Africa. I don't know if you know this, but there's clearly, there's clearly a history, you know what I mean? Like, and we cannot be blind to that. And you have to understand, whenever you start to see people like attacking the character of George Floyd to justify his murder, like this is part of the problem. You know what I mean? Like we got to like stop doing that. Like, can we just all agree this is a terrible thing, and we had to like kind of like work together? And I think on media, what it does is it helps inspire people to think differently, right? And we need to not just inspire Black individuals. This is obviously true, right? But it's not like Black Panther, when that movie came out, that like the people who called the cops on George Floyd were like, oh, maybe I should take a second think about this, right? No.
What would Wakanda think?
Yeah, what will Wakanda think about what I'm doing? And when the cops put their knee on his neck, they weren't like, oh, you know what? I love Black Panther. It's not like we don't have enough media to really kind of help kind of start to change the narrative. But it helps, definitely. It definitely helps. And I think like with video games is another one of those things that's pretty absent with Afrofuturism or any kind of like, because you can't make a fun game about just being a slave, right? And nobody's like, even if it has a really strong message behind it.
You make fun games about freeing slaves, though.
Yeah. Maybe that's the ticket. You're right. But there's an opportunity there where we can educate people in every aspect, so they're getting little nuggets. So they're not necessarily only being fed one type of piece of information, so that they can start making more informed and more educated, having more informed and educated opinions. Because like I said, my friend, he was very, very predictable with his opinions. But after talking to him, because my goal with him was not to like, no, you're definitely a racist and bigot. He's one of my closest friends, It was like, no, I'm trying to show him that this type of mentality and phrasing is actually lacks empathy. You know what I mean?
And I think you're going to encounter a lot of people like that in video games specifically too. Just a lot of like that's even just limiting it to our sphere. There's a lot of education to be done.
Absolutely. Like, we don't have our Black Panther in the game industry. Not yet.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of one. Even the Spider-Man franchise, the
Even if they
Miles
just took Horizon Zero Dawn and had her not be a white girl with dreadlocks, I would be so much more into that game.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
I mean, to me personally, just to keep it a buck 50, I think gaming has actually done a lot better than film and television in regards to representation of Black people. Personally, I look at some of my favorite games from, with Black people, from Shadow Man all the way on N64. I look at, I love Shadow Man. Like I have it on PC now. I look at even like what Capcom did with, Killer 7, like the lead character is a Black man, Grayson Smith. Like, and he's a fully fleshed out, character. Even if, you look at Final Fantasy 7 and Barrett, obviously with the remake, they kind of switched them up a little bit to be like less, I guess, cringeworthy with the dialogue. But as a character, I thought Barrett was dope because he is a Black man who is a eco-terrorist trying to fight a corporation that is essentially destroying Mother Earth, and also takes care of his friend's daughter. At the same time. Mm-hmm. It's certain nuances, that I look forward to when I look at games. And I think that even though obviously we can have more Black developers and studios, and we should definitely support that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that overall, I think that when it comes to Black characters, I think the gaming industry has done actually a better job. Now it can be better.
Yeah, I guess
I think it's definitely done a better job.
You also have celebrations of Black culture in games such as like Def Jam Fight for NY, which is the most.
Yes, let's get another one.
It's unabashedly Black. It's unabashedly Black owned.
Yep.
And
uncensored soundtrack too. That's what I like. Uncensored soundtrack.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I guess my point is that there should be like a blockbuster, right? If we were to think about the top 10 most popular games, right?
Yeah.
At least one of them I would like to have be kind of representative of America's population, right? Like of like Black people, because all those games you mentioned are really great, and I'm not actually disagreeing with you on that. But it's like, if you really think about it, like I think the closest one is San Andreas, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But even that is under an umbrella of like the Grand Theft Auto franchise. Like there needs to be something. I mean, I'm not too opposed to agreeing with you 100%, right? I actually am with you like 90%, that the game industry is a little bit more inclusive when it comes to this stuff. Because I think games in nature, they want you to have more fun experiences, right?
Yeah.
And so just telling those like kind of like really underdog stories doesn't really make sense in video games, at least.
I think that's why. I think that's. Oh, go ahead.
And I was like, and don't forget the most anticipated game this year, Cyberpunk 2020. 2070 is pretty much correct. The universe created by a Black man.
Yeah, I didn't know that till fairly recently. That was really cool.
It's also because I'm sorry.
No, but as you're saying, like, I think that's where Afrofuturism could come into play, in that you don't have to necessarily overthink it. Like, we were talking about how it's important to to have these deeper themes and thoughts and stuff. But even just on a pure aesthetic level, I think Afrofuturism is perfect for video games. Just all sorts of lasers and robots, and,
all sorts of lasers. That's all you need.
Yeah, rhinos with armor on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's good talking with you guys. I think we're reaching our time though. How much more time do we have actually?
10 minutes.
Oh no, we got some time. Awesome.
Okay. I was looking to see, because probably only have time for like one more like topic, I guess. Maybe we should just edit around this bit.
Well, let's Ural, you're in the audio, right? I would like to know more about like how you're introducing kind of like Afrofuturism or any kind of influence of that type into music, right, or sounds.
So even with just going back to what I did with Masters of the Sun, that was pretty much a full multimedia project that pretty much led into the Black Eyed Peas' album, the Masters of the Sun album that came out in 2018. So they went on tour. We toured all around Europe for about a month in promotion of the album, and at every venue we had a VR setup.
Cool.
for everybody, for pretty much people who attended the show to come see. Outside of that, we also went to various events like the Pan African Film Festival, Juneteenth celebrations at Leimert Park, and several other kind of events skewed toward black audience, who pretty much had a good 80% had tried VR for the first time because of how expensive how expensive the entry fee is, for a VR setup. Whether it's obviously it's gone down with the Oculus Go and the Quest and whatnot, but we were on the OG Samsung VR through Oculus, so that's super expensive. So I love that part of the project is because, again, I'm a music head. I've been, a music journalist for so long. So it was cool to blend all of those things that I kind of had done previously together.
Oh, right on, man. Yeah, actually, I don't know much of the stuff. I would love to hear it. If you can send us some links in the email chain, that'd be
no problem.
That'd be
great.
Great.
Everyone feel free to plug anything you're working on.
Absolutely.
To go back briefly to We Are the Caretakers, I think it's significant talking about how much this wave of Black media has an impact on the people who create media as well. Just to speak for my own part, the amount of invisible self-hatred you can take on over time, invisible barriers you put up for what you'll put in your work or not, like African aesthetics. Before I worked on We Are the Caretakers, I had never had that in my work because I connected that to all of the ooga booga stereotypes I'd seen in cartoons. I had connected it to all of the cringy people in my life who would ever talk to me about Kwanzaa. I had all of this stuff that was in me, inside of me, working, affecting the way in which I attempted to create media or even depict versions of people who looked like me that I didn't even realize existed until I had to, for work, break out of that mindset. I'm delighted by how much the examples in this talk and alone have opened my mind even further to be like, wow, Watchmen is kind of like black sci-fi. Wow, the Black Kirby and things like Black No More, even going back to like the Invisible Man. These things all come together to create a media landscape that provides a different vision of what we could be, what we can be, and how we perhaps should be represented. The hope accompanying the suffering. So on my end, deconstructing for my work and for this game and for just my identity as a human being through the media I consume and the media I create, my Black identity has been so fundamental in every single one of these pieces of media. Even Def Jam is another chink in that wall that tells you that that creating things that look like you are inherently less than when you could be making Star Trek. And that isn't true at all.
Yeah, one of the most just empowering things that I've done over the past few years as a journalist is that in New York, in Harlem, they have the Game Devs of Color Expo that I tend to try to go to every year. And it's just incredible to see all these black and brown developers, like indie developers, just doing their thing. Like this could just be how the industry looks like. Like it's incredible, to see that stuff. And just the idea that I can combine my identities as a Black guy and a games journalist, and like they're both the better for it. To kind of have to be like a complete person like that. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, awesome. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys, man. I've been enjoying this chat very much. Seems like we should do this more often. We should have like
yes, we should.
We should have like a group chat or something, or a Discord.
So hear me out. Instead of PAX, it's Blacks.
Oh, there you go. Yep,
Black
there you go.
Exploitation.
That's the name for the OnlyFans we set up after the main site is finished.
I'll join any secret Black Slack. I'm in so many other like Facebook groups and Slack and just any secret Black community, even adjacent to video games or journalism. I'm there in a second.
So
yeah, absolutely.
As we just wrap up, do y'all just want to do a final little thing each about what Afrofuturism, how you're planning to take Afrofuturism, or even the hope just inspires forward?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, just as a journalist, I'm always going to be trying to seek out that stuff to highlight that stuff. And I have some creative side projects. I'm just getting to them now. They're very amateurish, but it's definitely informs that stuff too. So.
Yeah, the easiest way for me is just to draw more of that kind of stuff because I have a pretty prominent social presence. So obviously showing more of this type of thing is really helpful. One thing that I've been doing aside from the Afrofuturism is just like, putting Black Art Matters on every artwork that I've been doing now lately. And I think this is a good tool specifically to start building up a hashtag that has a lot of cool artwork that people can find, either Black artists or artists that are making that stuff that's inspired from Black culture or African or Afrofuturism culture, whatever, that way it's become something that you can follow if you're really into it or something you can discover,
Every New York Comic Con, I would make a point to buy something from a Black artist at Artist Alley. It's very cool.
Like to the point we were talking about earlier about like having, that kind of individual who is from, the Black community who creates a project that hits all ethnicities, like they all get it, like they watch that movie and it's also highly inspired by their influences and stuff like this. It needs to happen, and the only way that can happen, because it may not be one of us, but it could be someone who we might have influenced, one way or another, right? Whether it was through the music or the writing or you guys' journalism or my artwork, right? So I think I'm just trying to do my part. Whether it becomes me, maybe I'm part of that. Maybe somebody's like, hey, I saw a piece of artwork you did. Let's make a movie around that. That'd be cool. But if not, I'm like, that's cool too. I'm not really in any hurry to do anything on the immediate level. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to make cool art and provide for the fams. You know what I mean? And so that's pretty much going to be my ongoing steps moving forward to try to help bring this recognition to Afrofuturism.
Yeah. I look at it as, for me personally, it's always just highlighting, especially on the gaming side, highlighting Black developers as much as you can. At least, getting people toward, Black developers Kickstarters, the rise in indie games over the past, 10, 15 years post Steam. It's a lot of Black developers out there that are always asking for money to support on Kickstarter. I support a good 3 or 4 a year, I at least attempt when the money's there. But but I think right now, we're in a time that's no better than ever. People are watching. People are watching, and I think that support and consistency is the way, and that's on. That's just all around.
I know.
Yeah, there's a piece of me that, even with the conversation we've had, can't help but see that white as the default that has been set, and just not accepting that when I make a character, when I even create the protagonist for a game, questioning their identity and the identity of my own work on a fundamental level is an ongoing process. It takes time to decolonize your brain, and every time you do, the knowledge that you might be helping decolonize someone else's brain as well is one of the most empowering things in the world. And I can't wait to see what this next phase of gaming looks like as all of us Black creators on a wider level, not just the folks in this conversation, although everyone in this conversation is dope. I can't wait to see what this next phase of media is going to look like as a result of that change.
Cool. So speaking of people in this talk and following cool Black creators, where can folks find all y'all? For me, keep read PCMag.com, and I'm on Twitter at Jordan W Minor.
Just Robot Pencil, wherever your social poison is. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My YouTube is Robot Pencil Design.
My portfolio site and everything about me, uralg.com, uralg.com, Twitter, uralg, Instagram, uralg323.
And I'm at Rit Nelson on Twitter, where I do really bad tweets when I'm not making really good art.
All right, cool.
Excellent. That sounds like a show.
Thank you so much for watching, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
It was nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, this was great.
Nice meeting you
Yeah,
guys.
this was really
Yeah.
dope.